The scariest monsters do not climb through windows wearing masks. Sometimes they knock on the door, bring dinner, quote scripture, babysit your child, and smile at your mother across the table. Sometimes evil does not look like evil at all. It looks helpful. It looks familiar. It looks like family. And that is what makes this case so disturbing. Because on Halloween morning in 2012, while children in Michigan were getting ready to dress up as ghosts, superheroes, and little monsters, a real monster was already walking around in plain clothes. No costume, no mask, no fake blood, just a calm face, a trusted name, and a secret life darker than anything hanging from a porch that October. We don't just cover cases, we exhume them. This is a channel for the families who never got answers and the victims who were forgotten. If you believe every file deserves to be reopened, hit subscribe and drop a comment below. The truth is buried deep, and we need you to help us dig. Her name was Rebecca Gay. She was 24 years old, a young mother, a daughter, a girlfriend, a coworker, and the kind of person people described with the same words over and over again: sweet, gentle, responsible, loving. She was not living some reckless life. She was not caught in a dangerous world. She was not mixed up with enemies or chaos or threats. She was just trying to raise her little boy. And sometimes that is the cruelest part of true crime. The victim is not walking toward danger. Danger has already been invited inside. Rebecca was born on March 26, 1988 in Michigan to Thomas and Sally Gay. She grew up in Midland with her siblings in a family built around faith, work, and community. Her father, Thomas, was well known and respected. He loved horses, understood them deeply, and became involved in charity horse racing that helped raise money for children's medical care. By all accounts, he was the kind of man people trusted because he had earned it. Rebecca inherited that warmth. She was the kind of girl who cared before she was asked to care. In high school, she took part in equestrian activities and volunteered at school events, including archery fundraisers that helped families in need. She was not loud. She was not dramatic. She was steady. Kindness seemed to come naturally to her, but life does not always reward kind people. Sometimes it circles them. When Rebecca was still young, her father became seriously ill. His health declined until hospice care became necessary. For the Gay family, that meant long visits, quiet grief, and the slow heartbreak of watching someone they loved fade away. Rebecca was still in high school during that painful chapter, still growing into adulthood while learning one of life's ugliest lessons. The people you love can be taken from you, even when you are not ready. After Thomas passed away, Sally Gay was left with a silence no one could easily fill. Her children were growing up and moving into their own lives. Her husband was gone. And loneliness, when it sits long enough, can start whispering dangerous suggestions. Sally eventually turned to online dating, not because she was chasing some wild romance, but because she wanted companionship. Someone to talk to, someone to sit beside, someone to make the house feel less empty. That is how she met John Douglas White. At first, John seemed like a blessing. He lived a couple of hours away in Augusta, Michigan. He presented himself as a man of faith, someone who had been through hardship and come out the other side humbled, changed, and devoted to God. Before long, Sally and John became serious. He moved in with her at the Broomfield Valley Trailer Park near Mount Pleasant, Michigan, a quiet rural area surrounded by farmland, open roads, and the kind of small-town calm that makes people lower their guard. John eventually became a pastor at a nearby church, the same church where Sally taught Sunday school. And in a community that valued faith, redemption, and second chances, John's image was powerful. He was not just Sally's partner. He was Pastor John, the helpful man, the church man, the man who prayed with people, fixed things, cooked meals, and smiled at children. It is amazing how much camouflage a Bible can provide when it is held by the wrong hands. Meanwhile, Rebecca was building her own life. After graduating high school in 2007, she studied cosmetology and began working in the beauty industry. Around that time, she was in a serious relationship with Chad Sando. Their relationship later changed, but together they had a son named Connor. Connor became the center of Rebecca's world. Motherhood did not make Rebecca weaker. It sharpened her purpose. She worked, she planned, she sacrificed, and she tried to give her son the kind of stable life every child deserves. When things became difficult between her and Chad, Rebecca did what many young mothers do. She leaned on family. She rented a mobile home in the same trailer park where Sally and John lived. Her mother was right across the street. On paper, it was perfect. Rebecca had help nearby. Connor had his grandmother close. And John, Sally's partner, was always around to lend a hand. He cooked dinners. He helped with chores. He watched Connor. He drove him to daycare or to meet Chad. He slipped naturally into the role of grandfather figure, even though he was not Connor's grandfather. He made himself useful. He made himself needed. That is one of the oldest tricks in the Predator's handbook. Become indispensable and people stop asking why you are always there. Rebecca trusted him. Her mother trusted him. The church trusted him. The neighborhood trusted him. And for a while, life looked hopeful. Rebecca worked at a retail store in Mount Pleasant and earned a management position. Her coworkers liked her. She was dependable, hardworking, and rarely missed a shift. In her personal life, she had found love again with Aaron Quinn, a man who cared deeply for her and accepted Connor as part of the package. Aaron was not just dating Rebecca. He was building a future with her. He planned to propose. His family welcomed her. Everyone who knew them could see that Rebecca had finally found something steady. But sometimes when a woman begins moving toward happiness, the wrong man sees it as rejection. People would later say John White's attention toward Rebecca had become uncomfortable. At first, it may have looked harmless. Compliments, visits, help with Connor, little acts of kindness. But over time, some people noticed the energy was wrong. Aaron thought John seemed overly interested in Rebecca. Coworkers said Rebecca had felt uncomfortable around him. John's own sister would later tell police that he had complained Rebecca was spending less time with Sally and him after Aaron came into her life. He talked as though he had been pushed aside, as if Rebecca owed him attention, as if helping someone gave him ownership. That is not love. That is entitlement wearing a church shirt. By October 2012, Rebecca's son Connor was 3 years old and Halloween was approaching. Rebecca loved Halloween. It had been one of her favorite holidays since childhood, and this year was special because Connor was finally old enough to enjoy it. She had picked out a Spider-Man costume for him. She decorated her home with pumpkins, fake cobwebs, spooky signs, and scarecrows she bought from work. She was excited for the simple, beautiful joy of taking her little boy trick-or-treating. A mother planning Halloween memories. A killer planning something else. On the night of October 30, Rebecca was at home with Connor. The next morning, Connor was supposed to be dropped off with his biological father, Chad, and after work, Rebecca planned to pick him up, dress him in his Spider-Man costume, and take him out for candy. She spoke with her mother. She spoke with Aaron. She sounded happy, normal, excited. No one heard fear in her voice. That is another cruel thing about the last night. Most people do not know it is the last night. They talk about tomorrow as if tomorrow has already agreed to come. Rebecca had been working morning shifts so she could spend more time with Connor. So when she did not show up for work on October 31, her coworkers immediately knew something was wrong. Rebecca was a manager. She was responsible. She was not the type to simply vanish without calling. They tried to reach her. No answer. Her phone was silent. At first, there is always that little voice that says, maybe it is nothing. Maybe she overslept. Maybe her phone died. Maybe there is a simple explanation. True crime is full of simple explanations that turn into crime scenes. A coworker was sent to check on her trailer. He knocked. No answer. The door seemed locked. The home was quiet, but while driving away, he noticed something strange nearby. In the parking lot of a bar sat Rebecca's light blue Buick. That made no sense. Rebecca's driveway was right in front of her home. Why would her car be parked near a bar? Why would she leave her purse behind? Why would a young mother who was supposed to work and then pick up her son for Halloween disappear without a word? The coworker went into the bar and asked about the car. The bartender had seen it, but Rebecca had not come inside. The whole thing felt wrong. Eventually, the trailer park owner was contacted and agreed to open Rebecca's home so they could check inside. Rebecca was not there, but her purse was. It was sitting open on the table, the same purse Aaron had given her, the one she almost never left behind. Women do not usually vanish into thin air while leaving their favorite purse behind like a forgotten prop. That purse was a silent alarm. Sally and John were contacted. Sally rushed over, terrified. Neighbors gathered. The normal rhythm of the trailer park changed into whispers, worry, and people standing outside with crossed arms and pale faces. By noon, Rebecca's family reported her missing, but authorities were hesitant at first. Rebecca was an adult. Adults can leave. Adults can make choices. Adults can decide to disappear. Except Rebecca was not just any adult. She was a mother, and Connor was waiting. Police decided to wait until 4:30 p.m., the time Rebecca was supposed to pick up her son. If she did not show up for Connor, then there would be no more pretending this was just a misunderstanding. Those hours mattered. In missing person cases, time is not just time. It is evidence evaporating. It is tire tracks fading. It is witnesses forgetting. It is a killer breathing easier. At 4:30, Rebecca still did not appear. That was the moment everyone knew. Something had happened. Police obtained a search warrant and began looking more closely at Rebecca's trailer and car. Inside the home, they found no signs of forced entry. Her purse was there, but her phone and keys were missing. The scene was quiet, but not clean. In the hallway, investigators noticed a suspicious area of carpet that looked different from the rest, as though someone had tried to clean it. There were dark streaks. Small drops of blood were found on a wall. More stains appeared on kitchen cabinets and a door handle. The house had started talking, and what it was saying was horrifying. Outside, Rebecca's Halloween decorations still surrounded the trailer. Pumpkins, cobwebs, scarecrows. The kind of things meant to create fake fear for children, but now yellow crime scene tape cut through it all. The decorations were no longer cute. They were grotesque. A fake haunted house had become a real one. Investigators also examined Rebecca's Buick. The driver's seat had been pushed far back. Rebecca was petite and normally kept the seat close to the steering wheel. Whoever had driven the car last was much taller. The vehicle was parked away from her trailer, partly hidden as if someone wanted it discovered, but not too quickly. That was not random. That was staging. The first people questioned were the obvious ones: Chad Sando, her ex and Connor's father, and Aaron Quinn, her boyfriend. That is standard in cases involving missing women. Partners and former partners are often the first circle investigators examine, because statistically, danger often comes from someone close. Aaron cooperated completely. He was devastated. He told police he had last spoken with Rebecca the night before. Around 10:43 p.m. he had sent her a good night text afterward, but she never responded. He assumed she had fallen asleep. The next morning, when his usual message did not go through, he became worried. Her phone seemed to be off or out of service. Aaron also told detectives he had been planning to propose to Rebecca. He wanted to build a life with her and Connor. Halloween, her favorite holiday, was supposed to become a memory they would cherish forever. Instead, it became the date that destroyed everything. Chad was also questioned. He spoke kindly about Rebecca and said they were focused on co-parenting Connor. There was no immediate evidence pointing to either man, and investigators began turning their attention toward the person who may have been the last known adult near Rebecca that morning: Pastor John White. John told detectives he had gone to Rebecca's trailer around 7:00 a.m. to pick up Connor and take him to meet Chad. He said the porch light was on, and the front door was unlocked. He claimed he heard water running in the bathroom and heard Rebecca's voice, but never actually saw her. According to John, she called out that Connor was still asleep and asked him to turn off the heat before they left. John said he lay down on the couch and dozed off. Around 8:00 a.m., Connor woke him up. John dressed the boy and took him to meet his father. On the surface, it sounded possible, but then detectives noticed cuts on John's nose and hands. Fresh cuts. The kind of marks that can come from repairs, sure, or from a struggle. John said a shelf had fallen while he was working in his trailer. Convenient, very convenient. Evil often travels with a toolbox full of explanations. At first, detectives did not arrest him, but they did not forget him either. They began interviewing people around Rebecca, Sally, and John. Church members described Pastor White as kind, generous, and devoted. He helped families. He watched children. He fixed things. He was, in their eyes, a man redeemed. But outside the church walls, a different picture began to form. Bar staff said John drank heavily. Co-workers said Rebecca had mentioned feeling uncomfortable around him. Aaron described him as obsessive. John's sister recalled him complaining that Rebecca had pushed him aside after everything he had done for her. Piece by piece, the mask began to crack, and behind it was not just a jealous older man. Behind it was a past that almost no one in Rebecca's life truly understood. Because Pastor John White had not always been Pastor John. He had been inmate John. He had been suspect John. He had been convicted John. And by the time investigators started digging into his history, they were about to learn that Rebecca Gay had not simply disappeared near a trusted man. She had disappeared near a man who had already left women broken in his wake. When detectives began digging into Pastor John White's past, the man standing in front of them changed shape. Not physically. He still had the same face, same soft voice, same church title, same "God gave me another chance" story, but paperwork has a way of resurrecting buried monsters, and John Douglas White had a cemetery full of secrets. He was born in 1957 and grew up in Augusta, Michigan. His father was a respected public servant, a police chief, fire chief, and even mayor. So John understood reputation. He understood appearances. He understood how a man could look respectable from the sidewalk while something rotten lived behind the curtains. After high school, John joined the Navy, later left the service, married, and began building what looked like an ordinary life. But ordinary is a dangerous word. It has hidden too many monsters. In 1980, when John was in his early 20s, he attacked a woman named Teresa Etherton, a neighbor who trusted him enough to enter his basement. He had invited her down by claiming he wanted to show her a model car racing track, a harmless excuse, a childish hobby, a friendly neighbor. That is the horror of it. Predators rarely start with violence. They start with normal. Once Teresa was in the basement, John attacked her with a knife. She fought for her life and survived, but what she later told authorities was chilling. She said John indicated this was not the first time he had gone after women. At trial, John acted remorseful. He said he had made a terrible mistake. He promised it would never happen again. A predator's first promise is usually just a rehearsal for the next victim. He was sentenced to prison, but after legal appeals and a lighter outcome, he served only a short portion of that sentence and was released. He walked back into society with the same hands, the same urges, and a better understanding of how to perform regret. Then came Vicky Sue Wall. In 1994, Vicky was 26 years old and worked at the same industrial laundry as John White. The two were having an affair. They met secretly in the back parking lot of a store, inside White's pickup truck. That parking lot became the last place Vicky was known to be alive. When police questioned John, he admitted the affair but claimed he dropped Vicky off and she was fine. Then he made a strange statement. He said he had blackouts and might not remember if something had happened. That is not a defense. That is a warning label. Investigators later found blood in his truck, but forensic testing at the time was not as advanced as it is today, and they did not have enough material to prove everything they needed. Weeks later, Vicky's remains were discovered in a wooded area. Her body was badly decomposed, and the medical examiner could not determine the exact cause of death, but the circumstances made it clear this was not an accident. John White became the main suspect. But without enough evidence for a stronger conviction, prosecutors offered a deal. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter and received 8 to 15 years in prison. 8 to 15 years. For a man with a prior violent attack against a woman. For a man tied to a dead coworker. For a man who seemed to leave devastation behind him like footprints in wet cement. The justice system did not stop him. It paused him. And sometimes that is all prison becomes for a predator, not an ending, just an intermission. While incarcerated, John's life fell apart in ways that made him look to some people like a man being humbled. His wife divorced him. His parents died. He began studying the Bible. He attended chapel. He spoke about repentance. He earned a minister's license. He became, in prison language, a model inmate. There is a very dangerous kind of performance that happens when evil learns the language of redemption. John knew the words: sin, forgiveness, grace, second chance. He wrapped himself in them until people stopped seeing the warning signs and started seeing a testimony. In 2007, he was released from prison with no probation and no supervision. No one was watching him closely. No one was making sure the man who had once attacked one woman and pleaded guilty in the death of another was not drifting back toward the same darkness. He moved north. He met Sally Gay online. He became part of her life. He became part of Rebecca's life. He became part of little Connor's life. And eventually, he became Pastor John White. The church thought it had gained a redeemed man. Sally thought she had found a loving partner. Rebecca thought she had a trusted family figure nearby. But the graveyard behind John White had never closed. As detectives in Rebecca Gay's disappearance learned more, their suspicion hardened. They asked John to take a polygraph. At first he resisted. Then, with Sally encouraging him, he agreed. During the ride, he began admitting pieces of his past to the detective, but even then he softened it. He wanted to control the story. Men like John do not confess easily. They edit. The polygraph results suggested deception. That gave investigators even more reason to search his truck and trailer. And that is when the mask did not just crack, it shattered. Inside John's truck, investigators found suspicious red stains. They found zip ties. They found large construction trash bags. They found small women's underwear consistent with Rebecca's size. And then they found something devastating, a broken necklace. It was Rebecca's. A necklace does not break itself and crawl into a suspect's truck. Blood does not appear by coincidence. Trash bags and zip ties do not explain away a missing mother. Inside John's trailer, police also found a rubber mallet with blood on it. Suddenly, Pastor John's story about hearing Rebecca in the bathroom and sleeping on her couch was no longer just strange. It was grotesque. Police confronted him. He denied everything at first. He kept claiming Rebecca had been kidnapped. He said he did not know where she was. He played the innocent helper, the worried almost stepfather. The pastor caught in a tragedy, but detectives had evidence. And more importantly, they understood something about him now. John White cared about his image. He cared about how Sally saw him. He cared about being viewed as a redeemed man, not the monster from old case files. So after hours of interrogation, detectives changed strategy. They talked about Sally. They talked about Rebecca's mother sitting in agony, not knowing where her daughter was. They talked about little Connor, a 3-year-old boy who had gone to sleep with a mother and woken into a world without her. They told John that if Rebecca was out there somewhere, Sally deserved to bring her home. It was not morality that broke him. It was exposure. He asked for a lawyer, but then, after being left alone with his thoughts, he changed his mind. Before confessing, he requested one final phone call to Sally. That phone call was not long, but it was haunting. John told Sally she was the love of his life. He told her she would never want to speak to him again. He apologized, but he would not fully explain. Then he hung up. Imagine that moment for Sally, the man she trusted, the man she loved, the man she had brought into her family, the man she had allowed near her daughter and grandson. And now his goodbye sounded like a confession with the words missing. After that, John White finally told police what happened, and the truth was colder than the Halloween ground. According to his confession, on the night before Halloween, John had been drinking heavily and looking at disturbing adult material online involving death. He had already been attracted to Rebecca, and that attraction had curdled into obsession. Earlier, when he had visited Rebecca's home, he had intentionally left a door unlocked. That detail matters. This was not some random impulse where he wandered in by accident. He created an opening. He prepared access. He turned trust into a weapon. Around 200 a.m. On October 31, 2012, John entered Rebecca's trailer. Connor was asleep. Rebecca heard something and came out of her bedroom. She expected safety inside her own home. Instead, she found John White. He attacked her with the rubber mallet. Rebecca tried to survive. Before she lost consciousness, she looked at him and said she knew who he was. There is something unbearable about that. Her last moments were not filled with confusion about a stranger. She knew him. She recognized the face. She understood in that horrible instant that the danger was not outside her circle. It was standing inside it. John later said that when he realized Rebecca was still breathing, he used a zip tie around her neck. Then he watched as her life slipped away. The man who had been trusted to care for her son murdered her while that child slept nearby. If evil had a sound that night, it was probably silence. After killing Rebecca, John tried to clean the scene. He used spray cleaner and towels on the blood. He removed her clothing. He placed her body and evidence into a large construction trash bag. He took her phone and keys. He moved her Buick to the parking lot near the bar, hoping to create confusion. Then he threw her keys and phone into a dumpster. This is where the morbid irony becomes almost unbearable. While families across America were setting out fake skeletons and plastic tombstones, John White was hiding the real body of a real mother. Halloween did not become scary because of costumes that year. It became scary because a pastor turned a young woman's home into a crime scene, then went back to acting normal. When John tried to move Rebecca's body in the trash bag, the bag tore. Blood leaked. Her necklace broke and fell. Small mistakes, but killers often forget something important. The dead cannot speak, but evidence whispers, and sometimes it screams. John drove to a ravine near the trailer park and left Rebecca there. He scattered evidence nearby, trying to separate pieces of the crime from the body and from himself. Then he returned to Rebecca's trailer, and this is one of the most chilling parts of the entire case. He slept on her couch after murdering her, after hiding her body, after cleaning her blood. He slept in her home while her little boy was still there. Then morning came. The world outside woke up to Halloween. Children got ready for school, parents bought candy, people adjusted costumes and laughed about spooky decorations. Inside Rebecca's trailer, her killer got up and dressed Connor. He took the little boy to meet his father just as planned. He acted helpful, calm, normal, because monsters do not always run from crime scenes. Sometimes they stay, make coffee, and ask if anyone needs a ride. Rebecca Gay's body was later found exactly where John said it would be. The injuries matched his confession. The evidence matched the horror. There was no longer any mystery about who had taken her life. The mystery was how a man like John White had been allowed close enough to do it. He eventually pleaded guilty. In 2013, John Douglas White was sentenced to a minimum of 56 years and a maximum of 85 years in prison. At 55 years old, it meant he would almost certainly die behind bars. The judge did not dress it up. He told John, "Some people have no place in society, and you are one of them." A brutal sentence, a true sentence. But for Rebecca's family, no number of years could restore what was stolen. Rebecca would never take Connor trick-or-treating in his Spider-Man costume. Aaron would never propose. Sally would never again look at trust the same way. And Connor would grow up with a story no child should have to carry, that his mother was taken by someone who had been welcomed into their lives. 4 months after sentencing, on August 28, 2013, John White took his own life in prison. Some people saw that as an ending. But for Rebecca's family, the ending had already happened on Halloween morning when a young mother disappeared from the life she was building. John escaped the punishment the court gave him. He escaped the long decades of prison walls, metal doors, and consequence. But he did not escape what he was, and he did not escape the truth. The truth is this: Rebecca Gay was failed long before John entered her home. She was failed when a man with a violent history against women received leniency. She was failed when he was released without the kind of supervision a man like him clearly required. She was failed by a culture too eager to believe that a religious title can erase a pattern of violence. Redemption is possible, but trust without accountability is not compassion. It is negligence with a halo. John White knew how to talk about God. He knew how to perform remorse. He knew how to stand in front of people and appear safe. And that is what makes this case so terrifying, because evil does not always announce itself with rage. Sometimes it offers to babysit. Sometimes it cooks dinner. Sometimes it sits in church. Sometimes it says, "I've changed." And sometimes the most dangerous costume a monster ever wears is the face of a good man. Rebecca Gay was 24 years old. She was a mother who loved her son fiercely. She was excited for Halloween. She had plans. She had love. She had a future. And all of it was stolen by a man who should never have been allowed to stand so close to her life. Her story is not just about murder. It is about the danger of ignoring patterns. It is about the cost of misplaced trust. It is about how communities can mistake charm for character and religion for rehabilitation. So when people say, "He seemed so normal," remember this case. Normal is not proof of innocence. Helpful is not proof of goodness. And a title, even pastor, is not a shield against darkness. The deadliest monsters do not always hide in alleys. Sometimes they are already across the street, holding your child's hand, smiling like family, and waiting for the door to be left unlocked.